Alright, I know fucking everyone's already had their take on this film in articles and interviews and op-eds and a whole bunch of video essays and even some awards, but let's just do this one more time. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is an animated superhero movie directed by Bob Persichetti, Peter Ramsey, and Rodney Rothman, produced by Avi Arad, Amy Pascal, Christina Steinberg, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, animated by Columbia Pictures and Sony Pictures Animation, and based on the superhero franchise of the same name, that follows Miles Morales, a young kid from Brooklyn who, soon after transferring to a new school, gets bitten by a multi-dimensional spider, develops superpowers, and after a chance encounter with the legendary Spider-Man, is left with the responsibility of shutting down the Kingpin super collider before it tears the world to shreds. However, he soon realizes he's not the only Spider-Person left in New York, and together with this growing band of web-slingers, Miles goes to save the multiverse whilst figuring out his new abilities. From its expressive animation to its well fleshed out characters and story and so much more, it's no wonder people went wild for this film when it first came out, myself included. It just hit all the right notes for me and easily became my favourite film of 2018, as well as my favourite Spider-Man film of all time. Sorry Raimi, but hey, it already had 2 in the title, so people are gonna tear me to shreds for that, aren't they? And with the anniversary of its theatrical release having come and gone, I thought it'd be fun to return to the Spider-Verse, and dive into all the technical details and artistry of what, for me, is the most notable aspect of its production. To this day, I still absolutely adore Into the Spider-Verse's visuals. It has a distinct look that stands out from the hyper-cartoony, hyper-realistic dichotomy CGI productions can often fall into, and whose animated format and three-dimensional medium provides it with a lot of possibilities to explore and experiment with. Something Chris Miller and Phil Lord were well aware of when they were first approached by Amy Pascal and Avi Arad with the idea of making an animated Spider-Man film. For Miller, the first thing you think is, well, doing an animated movie with the source material of a comic book, you can really get into the artistry in a way that no live-action version of a comic book movie ever did, with Lord adding that they tried to make it feel like an artist had touched every frame, and that an artist had interpreted his story so that it never felt like a computer simulation of a drawing, but always the idiosyncrasies of an artist. The staff behind the film developed new programs and workflows to achieve this, and took nearly a year and a half to create just a single shot they felt nailed the aesthetic they were looking for. It was an exciting project to work on, but there was also a lot of uncertainty about whether or not they would be able to successfully create something that could actually work. As Bob Persichetti notes, we had to have the people write new code and come up with new theories on how to make cloth move. All this in-the-weed stuff that always prevented a new style. The existing algorithms took a really long time to develop, so nobody in animation had the ability to then say, we're not going to use that stuff you spent all that time and money developing. We got lucky. It was a big risk to take, but one that, considering its critical and commercial success, I think paid off. This experimentation started by creating a visual language for the film based not on the standard techniques that crossed over into CGI from live action, such as motion and lens blur, but ones inspired by or directly lifted from the medium of Into the Spider-Verse's source material, comics and illustration. Halftones and hatched lines are used for gradients and shading. Objects are simplified and abstracted, sometimes to the point of simply being blobs of light and color to imply distance. Misaligned colors, similar to what one might find in a comic because of a printing error, create a depth of field that gives a shot focus. Text boxes reveal characters' inner thoughts. Full 2D splash frames heighten the impact of certain moments. Actual comic book art is used for transitions and more. Straight up 2D lines, both algorithmically generated and manually rigged, add to its illustrated feel, but also give its characters' expressions a level of emotional nuance that would be difficult to achieve without them. Even something as small as its almost pop art style use of color jumps off the screen and goes through a whole rainbow of hues over the course of the film to add that extra touch of vibrancy to it all. It's a 3D film whose CG feels hand-drawn, as if it really is a comic book come to life. Some of the ways it uses those comic-inspired elements are especially impressive to see in action, such as its paneling, which it uses to tell its story with greater clarity. I think this can best be seen when Miles panics about everyone knowing about his powers. It pulls in close on Miles' eyes as he looks back and forth across the hall, checking to see whether anyone's giving him weird looks, before slowly introducing panels filled with imagery of people talking behind his back. As his fear rises, so too does the amount of panels, eventually filling the screen and trapping Miles, figuratively, in context, and literally, in how it's framed, underneath the weight of his own paranoid thoughts. Though filled to the brim with visual information, each piece has its own space to breathe, creating a sense of chaos that mirrors Miles' anxiety while still being easy to understand at a glance. The panels allow the film to communicate a far greater breadth of visual information more concisely in a single shot, and uses it for all kinds of things from montages, transitions, and action, to setting up the occasional punchline. And the influence it takes from traditional animation only makes it even more interesting. Alongside many of its effects being actual 2D animations, the film's animators also, rather than using motion blur, use smear frames, a technique from 2D animation meant to simulate motion blur, throughout the film. A variety of different kinds are implemented, from geometric stretches of color to repeated limbs and body parts, to after images that trail behind a character. However, that lack of blur even on whip pans means every frame of the film becomes clear and crisp, arguably making each one an image that can be appreciated in its own right. This is made more noticeable by the fact that a large portion of the film is animated on 2s, meaning there's only a new image or pose for every other frame of animation, something that's quite common in 2D, which lets each frame linger for an extra split second and as a result, heighten the impact of said animation. Though it wasn't the entire film that was done on 2s, as its frame rate varies from scene to scene and character to character. This discrepancy is used quite cleverly in some scenes to reinforce its conflict, such as when Miles and Peter tried to escape the Alchemax facility.
So the beautiful thing about this sequence is we're literally seeing the two of them get on the same page. They start more out of sync and little by little get into sync with each other, and they're even on different frame rates until they both get it together.
Despite being a 3D production, Into the Spider-Verse takes a lot of influence from 2D animation to emphasize and complement the quirks of its illustrative style. But that style also boasts a surprising amount of variation. When looking at just its many web-slingers, it's clear to see how they've each been given their own look and feel, in their costumes, color palettes, silhouettes, and general aesthetics, which range all the way from ballet, punk, and graffiti art to Looney Tunes, anime moe, and 30s noir. When asked about this, Patrick O'Keefe, one of the film's art directors, said, "It would have been easy just to have done everybody in that look, but it doesn't seem like we were doing justice to these unique individual characters. Our character designers, Xiun Kim and Jesus Alonso Iglesias, did an amazing job creating the individual distinct personalities, and then it was the great work of character painters Wendell Dalit and Yashar Kasai that put these characters into different dimensions by pushing the rendering style. So in effect, we ended up making 5 movies. It just made sense to go that far with it." This variation can also be seen to a lesser extreme in the villains, whose designs immediately communicate the distinct threat they each present. Whether it be the fucking medieval monstrosity that is this film's version of the Green Goblin, to the Kingpin's bulky mob boss fashion, and the way it quite literally dominates the frame whenever he appears on screen. These unique visual identities are also sometimes emphasized by certain musical cues, as Peter's antics are backed by orchestral stings, Miles is by hip-hop beats, Gwen's by rock and roll ballads, and the Prowler's by a very subtle... Into the Spider-Verse's artistic style accommodates a surprising amount of aesthetic variety without any of it feeling out of place. And I think it's quite a fitting detail since it visually reinforces one of the main ideas behind the film, of all these different people from such different realities and walks of life coming together, of all their worlds literally and figuratively colliding. At the same time, it still maintains a clear focus on making it feel like a singular, cohesive world, and more specifically, one that its main character, Miles, would be well acquainted with. Aside from the way it emphasizes its alternate universe setting, with its twists, mashups, and parodies of various pop cultural touchstones, and the fact that Decemberary is a thing here, it grounds its world, and especially its version of New York, in Miles' perspective. According to O'Keefe, its design is a very curated look, in the sense that we're paying attention to the details of city life and reality that, to me, a lot of animated films kind of gloss over, like the graffiti or gum stuck on the mailboxes, as well as the complexity of the textures. We hand-painted a lot of our textures in an impressionistic way, because for us, it's the type of film and the type of character that would have an appreciation for a brick wall or a New York street. Having grown up as a city kid, there will be a lot of details to the city Miles would almost take for granted, and which are all easy to spot in the film's urban sprawl. It's built to show not just how Miles sees the world, but also how he feels it, and sometimes even goes as far as bending its environments out of shape to create imagery that better reflects that.
What's up, danger?
The models for the buildings all around the city in this scene were positioned in such a way as to make these monoliths of glass and steel seem impossibly tall, emphasizing the weight of this moment and Miles' own personal dread as he finally takes that leap of faith. It may not be realistic, but it's not trying to be. Hell, one of the unofficial rules of the film's production was to favor art over realism. The design of Into the Spider-Verse's world, more than anything else, feels like it's built to embody Miles' experience. This is, after all, his story, so it only makes sense that the film will show us things as he understands them. Into the Spider-Verse's artwork and animation is a stylistic marvel that slowly escalates its experimentations and explorations to see how far it can push the boundaries of its programs before they break, and that by the end leads to a bombastic explosion of color, style, and expression that, outside of gasping "holy shit," is hard to describe succinctly.
Does look cool though, right?
It's a film that went out of its way to find its own artistic identity, and whose ambition and determination is tangible in every frame of its runtime. And a year later, long after the hype has died down, it's something I still can't help but appreciate. And yeah, those are my thoughts. This took far fucking longer to get out than it really should have, and I apologize for that. I was hoping to have it up last week for Spider-Verse's actual anniversary, but then it got swamped by copyright claims to such an extent that my only options to deal with them and get this video up without having to wait potentially a whole extra month to maybe have it disputed were either to put most of the video through a filter that'd make it unwatchable, or just cut out all the parts getting claimed, which ended up being the entire story section. So, over half the video. It's pretty frustrating to have so much work go to waste, especially for the animated bits I was actually kinda happy with, including one where I went full conspiracy theorist about the film referencing the number 42. But also, though I think this art section of the video is stronger in terms of writing and editing, I'm painfully aware of the fact that it's nothing that hasn't already been said before, and I just think I made some more interesting points in the story section, about its themes and through lines, and the fact that its depiction of being a spider person works weirdly well as a metaphor for being LGBTQ+, which could probably justify a whole video in itself, and that I might actually try in the future, but still, it's a shitty situation. But hey, at least I was able to find a way to get something out, so that's a silver lining at least. That said, the stress of this entire process has left me feeling like I should just take a little break. I was hoping to get one more short video out before the end of the year, but I'd rather not burn myself out again. Don't worry though, I'll be back in January-ish for more pretentious nonsense. So for now, I wish you all a happy Christmas, a happy holiday, a happy new year, and a happy new decade. Anyway, let me know what you think, if you agree, disagree, who your favorite spider person is, if you're also struggling with the 2-year wait for the sequel, etc. And thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this and want to see more, then check out my last video, where I discuss Coraline's uncanny animation, dark story, and how they blend together into a magically macabre experience. Or watch me ramble about my top things of fall 2019. And don't forget to like, comment, share, and of course, subscribe to come find me. Hit the bell to stay notified, follow me on Twitter for more updates, ramblings, and poor attempts at humor, and hopefully, I'll see you later.